Welcome to our weekly program, The Inside Story of Chabad in America through the Mindel Archives. Today I want to share with you an amazing story that the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote, and he gave this story to Rabbi Mindel on Rosh Chodesh Adar. I don't know exactly what year. I think it was 1942 or maybe 1941. And this is he wanted to participate in the Shmuasen and Talks and Tales. As you know, that Rabbi Mindel wrote the Shmuasen and he wrote the Talks and Tales. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Shmuasen was it was holy, was very important by the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe. As a matter of fact, I think I once mentioned that the Frierdiker Rebbe said to Rabbi Mindel that when he reads the wonderful nature, the wonder of nature, Kumt mitzu Yerushalayim. I get Yerushalayim. That's how holy the Talks and Tales and the Shmuasen were. So he wrote a story that he wanted he should put into the Shmuasen. I think he put it in. So many of you probably heard this story, but probably most of you did not hear this story. Now, he gave him more stories the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote, and I don't have time today to share it with you, but in Mitzvah Hashem in the future I will. But today I will share to you this story because this is what he gave him Rosh Chodesh Adar. And since now we're in Adar. Now, there's a saying that when a story from the Baal Shem Tov on Mitzvah Shabbos is a zgula to parnoso. It's a good sign for livelihood. That's what there's a saying. So there is three lavdavkas, not necessarily. Lavdavka, a story from the Baal Shem Tov. Lavdavka on Mitzvah Shabbos. And lavdavka, it's a zgula for livelihood. It's a zgula for all good things. A story of any tzaddik. So today I want to read in English. The story was written, the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote it in Yiddish, and he gave it to Rabbi Mindel, original. Now, before I say the story, I just want to mention one thing here. Stories of Baal Shem Tov, all stories, there's hundreds of stories. Not necessarily is it true, but it could be true. There's a saying, whoever believes that all stories of the Baal Shem Tov is true is a fool. And whoever believes that it cannot happen is an apikoides, is an atheist. Now the same thing goes also in the stories of other tzaddikim. Same thing also with stories of the Rebbe. That many people, we say stories of the Rebbe, not necessarily is it true, but definitely it could be true. And it depends who you hear the story from. When you hear the story from a living person that is a dugma chaya, his actions reflect who she or he is. He means what he says. It's not just if he's a good speaker or if he's a good lecturer or if he gives advice. He has to be a dugma chaya, then you know probably the story is 100%. But the story that I'm going to read today is a story which is 100% because the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote it. And here I'm going to read the story written in Yiddish, and I'm going to translate in English a amazing story that was given Rosh Chodesh Adar. A Jewish woman came to the Baal Shem Tov with tears in her eyes and begged her, and she begged. She wants a blessing that the Baal Shem Tov should give her a blessing. She should give birth to a son. So the Baal Shem Tov said to her, "Go home, and God should bless you with a son." I'm trying to read from the Frierdiker Rebbe, word for word. She came back happy and told her husband about the blessing of the Baal Shem Tov, and what the Baal Shem Tov's, anything the Baal Shem Tov said, a word of the Baal Shem Tov is holy, and it's going to be fulfilled. And Take, a son was born to the couple. He was beautiful child and talented, and the parents had much nachas from this child. When the son became 2 years old, they took him to the Baal Shem Tov to receive a blessing. The Baal Shem Tov took the child on his hands and gave him a kiss, and gave the child back to the parents and told them, go home. Soon as the parents came home, suddenly the child passed away. Broken and mournful, the unfortunately parents went to the Baal Shem Tov right after Shiva, and they spilled their heart for him. So the Baal Shem Tov said to them, listen what I will tell you. Years ago, lived, he writes, a Techtiker king. Techtiker means a king that possesses everything that he needs. He has everything he needs, except for a child who would succeed him as king. So he asked his advisor an advice. So his advisor told him, no one can help you. Only the Jews can help you. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe writes. And the advisor told the king that the king should make a ruling that within a year the king should have a son. If the king doesn't have a son within a year, he should throw out all the Jews. And the Rebbe writes, wie sie gehen und wie sie stehen. They should throw them out the way they are. And then the Rebbe continues writing. So the king gave a decree, and all Jews gathered in the shuls, in the synagogues. They fasted. They said Tehillim and asked God he should have pity and give the king a son. Their cry and begging split all heavens. And then the Rebbe continues. So in Gan Eden, in the heavens, there was a holy neshama, soul, that couldn't see or take the pain of the Jews, and that neshama stood before the Kisei HaKoved, and that neshama, that's what he writes, before the Kisei HaKoved, the throne of glory, and said in Gan Eden, Ribono Shel Olam, God, send me down to the material world to be the king's son, so the Jews should, God forbid, not suffer. That's what Neshama said above. And this is how it was. Before the end of the year, a son was born to the king. The king was extremely happy, and he immediately nullified, he took off the decree. The king took a great professor to learn with his son. The young crown prince displayed unusual talents in all areas that he was learning, but the subjects did not appeal to him. That's what the Rebbe writes. One day, the crown prince, the son, says to his father, he's not happy with his studies. So the king decided to send his young son directly to the Pope himself. He should learn with him. So the Pope agreed to learn with the king's son. But the Pope made one condition, that 2 hours a day he locks himself in a room alone, and no one can disturb him. And he goes up to the heavens. Also, the king's son should not disturb him those 2 hours. So the king promised the Pope that he will see that nobody should disturb him. From then on, the Pope learned with the prince every single day, and the prince soon became well versed in all subjects, philosophy and language and more, what the Pope learned with him, except for 2 hours a day that the teacher, the Pope, secluded himself in his room, and then even the prince was not allowed to disturb the Pope those 2 hours. Then the Rebbe continues writing. This is again his handwriting. One day, the prince couldn't hold himself back from opening the door of the room, and he was curious what the Pope is doing those 2 hours. He made over keys somehow of the room where the Pope was, and he suddenly snuck into the room. The prince became shocked when he saw that the Pope is sitting wrapped around with talis and tefillin, and is learning Torah. And the Pope was also shocked, very shocked, that the secret was revealed, that he is a Jew. But the prince reassured him, they shouldn't tell anybody, and revealed to him his own desires for a long time, that he wanted to become a Jew. The prince wanted to become a Jew. This is what he told the Pope. And he asked the Pope, he should prepare him to be Megayer, he should prepare him to convert, to become a Jew. Then the Rebbe continues. Later, the prince traveled to his father, but he did not tell his father, the king, what happened. A short time later, he went traveling to a foreign land, did not come back home to his father, and he was Megayer, he converted, and lived the rest of his life like a religious Jew till he passed away. When the neshama, the soul of this son, went up to heavens and stood in front of the heavenly court, no one dared to speak a bad word about the holy neshama that was Meiseh Nefesh, that sacrificed for Jews. But only one accusing angel argued that 2 years this neshama was raised by not Jewish hands, and this needs to be corrected. So it was decided in heaven that the soul should come down to this world for 2 years to be raised in a Jewish kosher home. And the Baal Shem Tov stopped for a minute and then added, your child was the holy neshama. It was not destined for you to have children. But what does it matter to you that for 2 years you raised a holy neshama entrusted into your hands? And this is the end of the story that the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote. So whatever we see from here, that we never know anything, bichlal. What happened, everything is b'hashgacha pratius. Now, I want to show you, this is a story that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave to Rabbi Mindel, amongst a few more stories, which I will share with you, as I said. This I put in the memoirs. This is the third volume of the English memoirs. This is the cover that I put in the memoirs, and this is the story that I took a copy that Friedrich Rebbe wrote in Yiddish, and that's what I read now. This was on the memoirs. Now, Benigeya, the third volume of the memoirs, and Bechlal, how the notes that the Friedrich Rebbe gave Rabbi Mindel notes to write the memoirs. This is, I will share with you some other time. Here we have a written the Friedrich Rebbe. This is the cover of the memoirs, and the Friedrich Rebbe put his autograph, as you can see, on this memoirs. We'll talk about it some other time. So Yemirza Hashem, next week we will continue our program. The reason I read this story today is because Rosh Chodesh Adar, the Friedrich Rebbe gave this to Rabbi Mindel in 1941 and 1942. Next week we'll continue our weekly program. Thank you.